Well, welcome to MissouriNet.com. I'm Bill Pollack, sports director, and I'm joined by Matt Stoltz. He's the voice of Arkansas State football. Matt, thanks for joining us. 55-6 season opening loss at number 8 USC. I saw bits and pieces of this game. 4 turnovers by your offense. What was the biggest issue that the Red Wolves faced in terms of the turnovers?
Well, I think that it was just more than anything, just uncharacteristic of an offense that is very experienced. And I don't know if it was the atmosphere there at the Los Angeles Coliseum or just those first game jitters, but it was not the same offense that we saw last year. Now, credit the USC defense. I really think, Bill, that USC is back to being USC. There's a lot of people nationally that are predicting the Trojans to be a playoff team this year. And after seeing them last week, you see that their defense is much improved, and they had a hand in those 4 turnovers. But this is an Arkansas State offense that last year broke all the major single-season school records for total offense, for points scored, for touchdowns, and they returned 9 starters from that offense. You look at the numbers from last Saturday, and one thing that you'll see is the Red Wolves had over 400 yards in that ball game, but you also see they were limited to just 6 points, and the major thing was the four turnovers that you mentioned.
Well, I was going to mention that too. 402 total yards against the 8th-ranked team. I mean, that's a lot. Tell the Mizzou fans what the Red Wolves do well on offense and how do they move the ball.
Well, you have a lot of talent at the skill positions. Freddie Knighton is a first-team all-conference quarterback. He's a senior. He really doesn't look the part when you see his stature. He's 5'11", if that, and that's what they list him as. But he's a true dual-threat quarterback. He's a gamer. Last year, he was 12th in the country in total offense. He also had a very good touchdown to interception ratio in 2014. 24 touchdowns, just 7 picks. He rushed for 11 touchdowns. So Freddie is a very talented player who did not play well last week against USC. He'll be the first to say that. He is hungry to redeem himself, and usually you see the biggest improvements with not only quarterbacks but entire teams from week 1 to week 2, and that's what this A-State offense is hungry to do come Saturday. Freddie's a big weapon. Michael Gordon is an all-conference running back. Despite being limited by injuries last year, still rushed for 1,100 yards. Hopefully he can stay healthy this year, and who knows, a 1,500-plus yard season isn't out of the question for a guy as talented as he is, and he's a true home run threat. He's a guy that has that kind of breakaway speed. If he is able to find a hole and get into the open field, he can certainly outrun everybody and take it 70 or 80 yards. And then the third big offensive weapon is J.D. McKissick. He is the NCAA active leader in receptions with 242 in his career. He's just a very talented senior that is really the heart and soul of this offense.
I want to play comments from offensive coordinator Walt Bell earlier this week during the press conference. We'll play that, and then I'll ask you a couple questions based on what Walt talks about.
They're a big, even though they're young, and they replaced 30 to 40 sacks of graduating and gone to the NFL. They were when they lost that first group of NFL guys to Sheldon Richardson, people thought they'd never be the same. Then they got 2 more guys. People think they're never going to be the same. Well, they got guys right behind them too. So they've got 2 young ends that are good players. They're really violent inside with their hands, really physical up front. Outside the hash marks, they're skilled at corner. Thankfully, they don't have Sua Cravens out there. He was a pain. So, but no, I mean, there's a reason they've won the SECs 2 years in a row. I mean, they're sound, they're simple, they play hard, and they do a great job. So it will be a big challenge.
Matt Stoltz joining us, the voice of Arkansas State football. That was offensive coordinator Walt Bell. How much is the size of Missouri up front? And Bell was talking about the defensive ends there. How much of that is going to be a concern for Arkansas State?
Well, I think anytime you face a Missouri defensive line, it's a concern. And you look back at all the successful players over the last several years, and you heard the quote from Coach Bell. I mean, they just keep on bringing in new guys, and it doesn't matter who they plug in. The system is just a very solid one. And Charles Harris, just watching the film from the SEMO game last week, he was the guy that really stood out. Had 1.5 tackles for a loss, a forced fumble in that ball game. He looks like he's a player. I know Marcel Frazier, Walter Brady, Nate Howard all saw action, and those guys in the middle too, with Augusta and Hatley and Beckner. Those guys got a lot of playing time as well this past week, and you just watch them on film, and you see that they are a force to be reckoned with up front. And then on top of that, you're not going to find a more experienced combination at linebacker, than Brothers and Shear. I mean, these guys combined for 236 tackles last year. I think that those two are definitely a couple of guys that everybody's going to have to worry about this year. And of course, I know Kentrell Brothers got off to a great start last week with that 16 tackle effort against Southeast Missouri.
I'll play Coach Blake Anderson's comments from his press conference, and again, then we'll get your reaction as well.
Missouri's been pretty successful in the last few years, as we've noticed, and they're built pretty well. Speed-wise, they'll be fast and they'll be plenty powerful. So it's another huge challenge. It is what it is. They got to move forward. Nature of the season, you got to learn that real quick. But we got to learn from mistakes we made. There are a lot of things that are correctable that we got to fix. But knowing that there's a huge challenge coming to our place this week, I mean, yeah, you've got to move forward. You got a huge challenge ahead of you. You can't be lingering in the past. We got to have a short-term memory on some stuff that was out of our control, learn from the things that we can fix, and know that it's going to take our best effort, our best game, a cleaner game, technically a better game to be competitive against Missouri.
Matt, 2 years ago, Arkansas State came up here to Columbia. They were down 8 with 7:30 to play in that game, and the end score didn't reflect how close that game actually was. So this team goes on the road to USC. Now they come home to face Missouri. There's not much of an intimidation factor for this. I mean, this is a pretty good situation for Arkansas State.
Yeah, and I think that part of their motivation, they were embarrassed last week against USC. Now, I know USC is going to embarrass a lot of teams this year. They have that kind of talent. But the fact that Arkansas State turned the football over 4 times, the effort was there all night long. And Coach Anderson went on and on about the effort. They had a very low amount of loafs, and they keep track of that every game. They love the effort they saw, but the execution was just not there. They know they have the talent to do that. Returning 9 starters from a record-breaking offense a year ago, so I think they're going to be hungry to be back on the field. They played against big-time opponents in the past. They do it every year, and they've been able to be in a lot of football games like this. You mentioned the game 2 years ago in Columbia. A-State led that game with 4 minutes to go in the third quarter. 16 to 13. It was 20-16 Missouri at the end of 3, and obviously that was a very good Missouri team that went on to win the SEC East. So there's a lot of players on that that were on that 2013 team that are still around in 2015. They remember that game. They remembered they played with a very good Tiger team on that night on the road. And that's a source of motivation as well. Another one is, this is only the second time in the history of Arkansas State football that they've hosted an SEC team. The only other time was when Eli Manning and Ole Miss came to Jonesboro back in 2001. And now You've got Missouri coming in, of course, a state that borders you. We've got a lot of fans in the Boot Hill of Missouri, a lot of Missouri fans that are a lot closer to Jonesboro than they are Columbia that I know are planning to make the trip down. And we have a very good fan base as well. We're right there at the top of the league every year as far as attendance. The capacity for the stadium is just over 30,000, and we're hoping for an overflow crowd come Saturday. And believe me, there's a lot of attention on this football game. And A-State, with the success over the last 4 years in particular, has built a very good fan base. And believe me, it is going to be a big-time college football environment when they kick off at 6 o'clock on Saturday.
There's no doubt. I agree with you. A lot of the Mizzou players that I talked with this week remember that game 2 years ago. They know how tough Arkansas State is. They are not overlooking this. Now, Mizzou fans, and I'm talking to you, you may have looked at the schedule as you go through, Missouri could win 10, 11 games this year, and you probably just skimmed over Arkansas State. This is a game, Matt, though, that scares me. This team plays tough, doesn't matter the situation, and I think just the fact that they played at USC, coming back with a lot of issues that they had to fix, a lot of motivation to improve. At home, the crowd will be great. This is one of those that if you're not prepared as a team, and Missouri's got some issues, we don't know about their run game, this could make for some very interesting football come Saturday evening.
Yeah, and there were some positives from that game. You look at the final score from Saturday, and I think that a lot of people can get caught up in that, but a lot of those points that USC scored were due to the turnovers by the offense.
Right.
The defense, which is completely revamped up front this year. It's just a patchwork job up front on the defensive line at the end of the season last year. And, the Red Wolves, due to all the injuries, they were just decimated up front, couldn't stop anybody from running the football. They have really addressed that. They are 3 deep at every position on the defensive line. They took 14 different defensive linemen to Southern Cal last week, and they ended up sacking Cody Kessler 5 different times in that football game. And I don't know if anybody's going to do that this year against one of the better offensive lines in the entire country. They held USC to just 3 of 10 on third down, and USC was one of the best teams on third down all in the entire country last year. So yeah, and there were some positives to take out of that football game, and they want to build on those. And of course, offensively, they want to correct the mistakes that they did, especially with the turnovers.
Yeah, look, and there were a couple times that Kessler kind of slipped out of. There could have been maybe 7 or 8 sacks in that game. And here's the thing that I noticed: it looked like your defensive backs were doing a pretty good job of hanging with the receivers. It looked like the big plays came after the catch, that they kind of pulled away or broke a tackle. It looked like there was some pretty decent coverage and some decent pressure up front, and that's what Mizzou fans, that's what you've got to be concerned with, because I still think, with Evan Boehm questionable, I wasn't all that impressed with the play of the offensive line. And if Matty Mock gets put under pressure with the young receivers, it could be interesting. So, yeah, it'll be a great matchup. Matt Stoltz, the voice of Arkansas State football, great insight, and thanks for your time.
Oh, well, it's going to be a fun night. I appreciate you having me on, Bill. And one streak's got to end too. I mean, it's amazing what Missouri's done on the road the last couple of years. The 10 straight, true road games that they played. They've won them all in the 2 championship seasons for them. I mean, that especially with the caliber of opponents they played on the road. That's just something that deserves so much respect. And then A-State has won their last 10 home openers, which is the 8th longest streak in the country in that regard. So one of those 10-game streaks has to come to an end on Saturday, and can't wait to see it again. We just expect an electric atmosphere in Jonesboro, and it should be a very, very fun night.
That's a great storyline. Yeah. Thanks again, Matt.
All right. Appreciate it, Bill.
Yep. And thanks for watching us here at MissouriNet.com.